Calling to order the Monday, March 21st regular meeting of the 39th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Here.
Councilmember Gavin.
Here.
Councilmember Hennon.
Here.
Councilmember Price.
Here.
Councilmember Villani.
Here.
Mayor Turbrack.
Here. Our first order of business this evening is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Gavin with support from Councilmember Baker. Are there any changes or additions? Seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Villani.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Tonight's agenda has been approved. At this time, please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. With us this evening is Pastor Zach Dunlap.
Let's pray. Good and loving God, thank you for who you are and what you do. In a time when people are fighting for freedom or fleeing as refugees, thank you for the opportunity that we have to live in this nation, this state, this city. We do not take our freedoms lightly, and we know that we have been blessed to be a blessing to others. Thank you for opportunities to serve one another through the political systems and structures of this land, through faith communities, through nonprofits like the Berkley Cares Food Pantry. Empower us to take what you have entrusted to our care, our time, our passion, our resources, energy, and gifts, and put it all to good use, not just for our own good, but for the good of all of your beloved creations, all of your beloved children. Remind us that lasting change is brought about not through violence, coercion, power, or fear, but hope, humility, and love. Guide our city council tonight as they deliberate and make decisions about the future of our little corner of the world. Comfort the hurting, heal the broken, hear the cries of the oppressed, and send your peace and joy that we might dwell together in harmony, respecting our differences and following the way of love. We come from many different faith backgrounds in this city of Berkeley, but it is in the strong name of Jesus and the power of the Holy Spirit that I pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will now move on to public comments. Again, these are public comments for items that are not included on tonight's agenda. You will have the opportunity to speak on a specific agenda item while it is being considered. Remember, council members will not engage you in discussion, but if your concern needs to be addressed by a member of city staff or department of the city, please sign in at the clerk's table. When you come up to the microphone, please state your name and city of residence.
Greetings, honorable body. I am Senator Marshall Bullock. I represent the 4th District, which is a great deal of Detroit, Lincoln Park, Allen Park, and Southgate, but due to our new independent redistricting committee, where I live now, is a district that will have a great deal of Detroit and then all the way to Birmingham, and so that encompasses Berkeley. So I just wanted to come introduce myself, let you guys know what I do. I am the chairman of the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus. I sit on the Committee of Insurance and Banking. I sit on Transportation and Infrastructure. I sit on Insurance and Technology, and I am the Vice Chair of Family, Seniors, and Veterans. I was appointed to the Racial Disparities Task Force for Coronavirus. I was appointed to the Task Force for Child Welfare Improvement, and also, because you got a little issue here, I sit on Marijuana Regulatory Agency, Social Equity. And so that is just a part of what I do. I just wanted to come meet you guys and meet the citizens of Berkeley. I come from a background of working in the mayor's office for 6.5 years under Mayor Duggan, and so I have a municipal background in some of the issues. Just like municipalities have more in common than they have differences, and so we work through a lot of things, and so you guys might have ideas, I might have ideas, but whatever I can do to help you guys moving forward, whether I am your representative moving forward or not, I would greatly appreciate that relationship to make sure I can help you get things done in Lansing.
Well, thank you, Senator, for coming with us and speaking with us and introducing yourself, and we look forward to continued conversations.
Good evening. Gary Leitner, 3581 Kenmore, Berkeley. I just want to thank you for this time. I'm here to talk about the Kenmore Cornwall Water Main and Pavement Project. We passed out a letter to each one of you. We did a FOIA request on February 22nd and just received some information on March 15th, just this past week, which was just under a month. One big item that we recognized that was discussed in our public Zoom meeting, kind of town hall meeting that we had, referenced a safety report that apparently, I guess, in this letter you'll find that I guess doesn't exist. And this was, I think, a large basis on emergency vehicles, and had that type of information about widths and that sort of information, which was why they're trying to allow only parking on one side of the road. While they were minimizing the road down to, I think now it's 23 and a half feet wide, with just parking still on the east side only of the road. Many of the residents I've talked to, we'd like to keep parking on both sides of the road, as it has been since the beginning of Berkeley. Another item that was discussed in this meeting was a meeting about arborist reports, and they talked about how many trees may be affected. But again, we didn't see any information on this request, so we'd like to request to see that information. And also, in our last meeting 2 weeks ago, we had a letter from the city talking about that there would be another Zoom meeting, which we haven't heard anything about yet, so hopefully that will happen before the next council meeting. I don't know if anybody can address that or has any schedule outlined yet. A couple other questions regarding this project is who made all these decisions for the city? It looks like it was mainly HRC and DPW. I don't know if the city manager was involved. It sounded like city council was only involved in making a recommendation to allow the drawings to start, but I guess that's still unclear. So I guess a big question is, was there a professional planning company hired to examine this project? And then next I have a couple letters that we received that I'd like to read into the minutes. Linda and Joe Long, 3568 Kenmore Road. We're writing to express our concern of the Kenmore Cornwall project. I've lived in my house for 43 years. My husband, 25 years. We love the Berkeley community and take pride in our property. We have a large family of 8 children and 18 grandchildren who are over frequently since we have a pool in our backyard. This being said, our concerns are listed below. The driveways on our block are not big enough for family guests and parking only on the east side. That limits the number of spots. When our family comes over, we take up quite a few spots, which would not leave many spots for our neighbors' families' get-togethers. During Woodward Cruise weekend, the city parades turn our street into a parking lot of people that don't live here, and our family has no place to park if you go to one-side parking only. Our house is on the east side of Kenmore, and in the fall we have a ton of leaves that we have to put on the street. Where are we supposed to put the leaves if people are parking in front of our house? When we put leaves out in front of our house and someone parks on them, this becomes a fire hazard. Plus, with leaves on each side of the road, that will make it a one-way road. Why is just the first block of Kenmore and Cornwall to Webster only affected and not all of Kenmore? If some trees have to come down, we're okay with that because we know new ones will be planted. This would ensure that we still have parking on both sides the way it has been well before the 43 years that I've been here. Thank you for your concern and listening. Joe and Linda Long. The next letter is from Aaliyah Zebke. She's a resident on Cornwall Street in Berkley. I'm a resident on Cornwall Street and oppose reducing the parking by 50%. If the threshold for parking on both sides of the street is 25 feet, then let's be exempt from that by adding 6 inches to our street. It does not have to be one or the other. Trees are parking. We can still be known for St. John's Woods. It just takes patience and long-term vision. I envision a wide open, beautiful street lined with trees planted in 2022 that grow beautifully because they were picked just before that vision. Reducing the parking by 50% has several negative impacts. Overall, Berkley is known for not having enough parking. Residents, retail families with teens, one-car width driveways. To reduce our street width by 50%, you are asking many residents to live differently in their daily lives. Not only current residents, but also it impacts future potential growth in the St. John's Woods area. Families are looking for wide open streets. Narrow streets and parking on one side are a huge turnoff. We can plant new trees. If we take away 60, let's add 80. The Harvard Street project included adding new trees. Why can't we do the same? We hope this neighborhood will be here for the next 100 years plus. Let's look at the long term and not just the short term. Trees are meant to grow. If we can increase the number of trees with new ones, then the tree problem is solved. When you have more than 2 people in a household, street parking becomes essential. Reduced parking will make us residents feel as if we are parking in an urban setting where parking is harder to find in front of our own home. The city is choosing to make it more difficult to accommodate our growing families. Kenmore Cornwall residents have to think about the future as well. Do we want to add families that can stay beyond elementary school years? Then their teens need parking. This is a permanent change. Trees can grow. We can never get this size of the road back again. We have one shot to get this right. The safety of kids crossing the street is not about the capacity of how many cars, but instead the sight lines between the cars, kids chasing after a basketball, crossing a street on a bike, etc. Also, please try backing up on a narrow street with cars parked only on one side. The narrower the street, the harder it is to do safely. On a practical note, we should be able to park at least one car at any time in front of our house. With reduced parking, that is not always the case. This means the next door neighbor may not be happy that on a regular basis other people's cars, friends, etc. are parked in front of their house and leaving them with no extra parking in front of their own house. I appreciate your openness to discuss this further. The city employees have all done many wonderful things to make this a great place to live and raise our kids. We just ask that we continue to work closely together to maintain certain rights that we wish to preserve. Thank you for your time and consideration, Leah Zepke. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
Good evening. Ryan Duffy. I live on Kenmore, 3600 Kenmore in Berkley. I too am here to speak about this widening or lessening of the street width. Something Gary mentioned is the citywide initiative that was brought about. I'd like to have a better explanation as to why this, or how this was determined, who determined it, what creates the need for this new safety width. Is it larger vehicles, larger fire trucks? To me, it seems like this new requirement was kind of pulled out of thin air. There was not much, I mean, when we've looked into it to Freedom of Information Act to find out how this was determined, there was very little information, and to me, it seems like they just plucked a number. 25 feet seems like a good amount, and if you're less than that, then you have to be on one side parking only. I think another consideration is that because we are going to be the first and we're trying to push this through all of Berkeley, I think if we were to poll every street that is going to be affected by this new decision, we might find a lot more resistance. Right now, it's only affecting us, but because the plan is to move forward with how we handle this Kenmore-Cornwall change, I don't think that we'll get a lot of complaints if people get to maintain their parking spaces. If you look at New York or Chicago, granted those are big cities, but parking is a premium. It is something, you can't really put a price on it. And over time, it is, there's a lot of value in being able to put a couple of cars out into the street on either side and not have to worry about where you're going to park. You don't want to go to the next block and have to, I don't know, are you going to cut through your neighbor's yard? You got to walk around the block. It's just, it's not going to make life convenient, and I think that we all want to have convenience in our lives. I do have a letter here from my neighbor as well. Her name's Michelle Ash, and she says, "Hello, I'm unable to attend the meeting due to my afternoon job. First, will this project get rid of the flooding on the street without pushing the water into our basements? The rains that we have create floods that come up to many of our porches. Our ground is clay and it does not absorb. Decreasing the street size will not help. If water has nowhere to go, are you guaranteeing no flooding? I've done the backflow valve in my basement, and it's not even close to foolproof. Water still comes up, sometimes up into my wash tub. I live on the east side of Kenmore, and I have realtors in my family, and making one side parking is not good for resale value. It'll be a fight to even get a spot on the street for some. I also have a son who will be riding his bike to Berkeley High. This will take away space for him to ride safely. My other concern is the leaves. I have one of the largest sycamore trees in Berkeley in my front yard and 8 more in my backyard. Where am I supposed to put the leaves? Then they'll get parked on, and that's a fire hazard. I'm not against saving trees, but this neighborhood has many old trees, and I thought we were trying to mix the ages of the trees anyhow. This is the perfect opportunity for taking down old trees and putting in young trees, especially the type of tree that belongs near the street, smaller trees. How will 24 inches, she wrote this prior to the update, how will 24 inches actually make that much of a difference for the trees? There are many other streets that have been repaved, even cemented. Did you have to make those streets smaller? I do not agree that saving trees that are too close to the street are worth giving up parking, safety, and the value of my property. It's important to most of us to maintain our neighborhood, and this decision is also important to us. If there's something I'm not aware of, please let me know. When delivery trucks double park, will there be room to pass? How safe is it for our kids having one side of the street completely jammed with cars? And will there be digging on the east side of Kenmore down to my connection? I'm having a connection redone. Why are you requiring a $5,000 bond when the street does not have to be replaced? I thought that bond would be waived. I don't understand why it would not be waived. Thank you for reading my concerns. Michelle Ashbaugh, Kenmore Road. This actually reminds me of one other concern I have, and that's the cut through. A lot of times, cars go flying down that street, and I have 2 young daughters as well, and I'm terrified that they are going to go chasing a ball or something out into the street. If there's only parking on the one side, I really think that encourages speeding. People cut through, they want to avoid the 12-mile Coolidge light in both directions. when it backs up on Coolidge headed south, they cut through down Edwards, right down Kenmore, and get over to 12 Mile. If they want to miss that left turn, they do the same thing going the other direction. It's, I think that when you open up that one side, it just gives a free shot for them to speed down there. And it happens daily. So anyway, that's my concerns. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening to this honorable body. Mike McGinnis with the Berkley Downtown Development Authority. Just want to briefly invite you in the community to a few ongoing initiatives in our dynamic downtown. Now through the end of March, there are 2 bites at the Shamrock Apple for a good time in downtown Berkeley. One is the Downtown Leprechaun Scavenger Hunt, which is through your smartphone with the Action Bound app. You can explore the leprechaun fairy doors, which are now leprechaun doors throughout downtown, and also win literal pots of gold and gift certificates thanks to Zalman's Treasures, a downtown Berkeley business. So we encourage you to check that out. And we also have partnered with the dynamic Berkeley Public Library, inspired by the very successful Tales on the Trail partnership with Parks and Recreation. We have the Leprechaun Story Stroll. So 1 storybook along Coolidge, 1 storybook along 12 Mile. The 12 Mile Leprechaun story starts at the Twisted Shamrock, naturally, and the Coolidge story starts at Berkeley Public Library. Those multiple stops, you can follow along with your family on either of those stories runs through March 31st. And on the Coolidge side, the final stop of Vibe Credit Union, free coloring books and crayons are being distributed by our friends at Vibe as well. And just put on your radar that the first Ladies' Night Out of the season, that fun shopping experience, is Thursday, April 7th. So we look forward to seeing you throughout downtown Berkeley on that particular day, but all year round. You can check out more at downtownberkeley.com. And thank you for your continued partnership with the city.
Thank you, Mike. Ms. Mitchell, did you receive any communications today?
Yes, sir. Paul Jordan, Berkeley, stated, 1, he believes 3-minute rule for public comment should apply to all agenda items at every meeting. 2, he does not favor increasing the number of marijuana licenses from 3 to 5. He stated council already adopted an ordinance that addressed ties. Please vote no on O222. Second correspondence is from Amy Keeley, Berkeley. She does not want more marijuana dispensaries in Berkeley. She would like council to be smarter about finding revenue sources other than dispensaries and Bigfoots. And that is all.
Okay. Seeing no additional folks coming up to the microphone for public comments, we will end public comments and move on to this evening's order of business. First up is the consent agenda. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read those items?
1, approval of the minutes. Matter of approving the minutes of the 39th regular city council meeting on Monday, March 7th, 2022. 2, warrant. Matter of approving warrant number 1372. 3, proclamation number P422. Matter of proclaiming April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. 4, proclamation number P522. Matter of proclaiming April 2022 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. 5, proclamation number P622. Matter of proclaiming April 2022 as Autism Awareness Month. 6, proclamation number P722. Matter of proclaiming April 2022 as Fair Housing Month.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved. Support.
A motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Dean with support from Councilmember Villani. Are there any changes or corrections to our consent agenda? Seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Villani,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Consent agenda has passed. We now move on to our regular agenda. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 1?
Recognitions, presentations, matter of any recognitions or presentations from the consent agenda.
We have 4 proclamations this evening on the consent agenda. I've asked Councilmember Villani to read proclamation P0422.
A proclamation of the Council of the City of Berkley, Michigan, proclaiming April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. Whereas abuse and neglect are suffered by children in our communities, regardless of age, race, gender, and economic situation, and 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before the age of 18. And this reported maltreatment is only a portion of the overall problem threatening our children, for so many cases go unreported, and today's technology has brought with it new and dangerous forms of child endangerment, the online predator. And the devastating consequences of physical and emotional abuse of our children affects the community as a whole, and finding solutions needs to be attended to by the community as a whole. And Care House of Oakland County works to break the cycle of child abuse and neglect, provides a protective circle of light and hope for a better life, advocates for the safety and protection of children, and partners with community organizations and agencies to offer programs and services aimed at preventing child abuse. Now therefore, the Council of the City of Berkley hereby proclaims that April 2022 shall be recognized as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in the City of Berkley. The City of Berkley calls upon its citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in the City of Berkley to increase their participation in efforts to prevent the abuse of our children, thereby strengthening and protecting the community in which we live. Proclaimed this 21st day of March 2022 at a regular meeting of the Berkley City Council.
Thank you. I've asked Mayor Pro Tem Dean to read proclamation P0522.
A proclamation of the Council of the City of Berkley, Michigan, proclaiming April 2022 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Whereas sexual assault is widespread and experienced by thousands of people, Sexual Assault Awareness Month is intended to raise public awareness around sexual violence and its impacts, as well as educating the community on how to prevent it. And whereas sexual assault is broadly defined as any form of unwanted sexual contact obtained without consent, through the use of force, threat of force, intimidation, or coercion. And whereas the effects of sexual assault can ripple throughout a community, as seen by the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention statistics, indicating that 1 in 3 women and nearly 1 in 4 men will experience sexual violence involving physical contact during their lifetime. And whereas sexual violence can deeply and enduringly impact survivors on psychological, emotional, physical, and social levels. And whereas access to informed and supportive services can greatly increase survivors' ability to heal from sexual assault. And whereas our community must be committed to holding sexual assault perpetrators accountable for their heinous crimes. And whereas our community must be committed, and whereas we join with the state of Michigan and sexual assault prevention advocates to acknowledge how important it is to work together to educate our communities about sexual violence prevention, support survivors, and to speak out against harmful attitudes and actions. Now, therefore, the Council of the City of Berkley hereby proclaims, Section 1, that April 2022 shall be recognized as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the City of Berkley. Section 2, the City of Berkley calls upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses and schools in the City of Berkley to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of sexual assault and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all survivors of acts of sexual violence. Proclaimed this 21st day of March 2022 at a regular meeting of the Berkley City Council. Daniel J. Turbrack, Mayor.
Thank you. I've asked Councilmember Hennon to read proclamation P0622.
Proclamation of the Council of the City of Berkley, Michigan, proclaiming April 2022 as Autism Awareness Month. Whereas autism spectrum disorder is a pervasive development disorder affecting the social, communication, and behavioral skills of those affected by it, And whereas the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that 1 in every 68 children in the United States are among the more than 2 million Americans living with an autism spectrum disorder. And whereas, while there is no cure for autism, it is well documented that if individuals with autism receive treatment early in their lives, it is often possible for those individuals to lead significantly improved lives. And whereas individuals with an autism spectrum disorder often require a lifetime of specialized and community support services to ensure their health and safety, and to support families' resilience as they manage the psychological and financial burdens autism presents. And whereas we recognize and celebrate those with an autism spectrum disorder who are achieving and breaking down barriers for the community and who are striving to create a culture of understanding for those living with an autism spectrum disorder. Now therefore, the Council of the City of Berkeley hereby proclaims, Section 1, that April 2022 shall be recognized as Autism Awareness Month in the City of Berkeley. Section 2, the City of Berkeley believes it is important to have an inclusive community committed to supporting all citizens regardless of abilities. The City of Berkeley also calls upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in the City of Berkeley to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of autism spectrum disorders and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all community members. Proclaim this 21st day of March 2022 at a regular member meeting of Berkeley City Council. Daniel J. Turbrack, Mayor.
Thank you. And I've asked Councilmember Price to read Proclamation P0722.
A proclamation of the Council of the City of Berkeley, Michigan, proclaiming April 2022 as Fair Housing Month. Whereas the month of April 2022 marks the 54th anniversary of the signing of the federal Fair Housing Law, Title VIII, under the Civil Rights Act of 1968. And this landmark law, along with other federal and state legislation, broadens access to housing regardless of race, color, sex, national origin, age, marital status, religion, disability, or family status. And Fair Housing Month is designed to heighten people's awareness of their rights under the law when pursuing the purchase or rental of housing. And housing choice impacts our children's access to education, our ability to seek and retain employment options, the cultural benefits of a diverse community, and the quality of health care we receive in emergencies. And the laws of our nation, state, and county seek to ensure equality of choice and access to all people. And ongoing education, outreach, and monitoring are key to raising awareness of fair housing principles, practices, rights, and responsibilities. And the housing counselors of Oakland County's Neighborhood and Housing Development Division are experts in fair housing laws and are ready to assist any individual or family to ensure their rights when purchasing or renting a home. Now, therefore, the Council of the City of Berkeley hereby proclaims that April 2022 shall be recognized as Fair Housing Month in the City of Berkeley. The City of Berkeley urges all residents or prospective residents to contact Oakland County's Neighborhood and Housing Development Counselors if they believe that they or someone they know has been the victim of housing discrimination. The City of Berkeley believes it is important to have an open and inclusive community committed to accessible fair housing and to promote appropriate activities by private and public entities intended to provide or advocate for equal housing opportunities for all residents and prospective residents of the City of Berkeley. Proclaim this 21st day of March 2022 at a regular meeting of the Berkeley City Council. Daniel J. Turbrack, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Price. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 2 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M3022, matter of approving the Berkeley Art Bash event on Saturday, June 11th, 2022, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on 12 Mile Road for the Berkley Area Chamber of Commerce, P.O. Box 72-1253. Approval is conditional upon the submission of required items and documents prior to event dates. Council reserves the right to rescind the permit due to state and/or county health and pandemic protocols.
Is there a motion to approve M 3022?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Hennan with support from Councilmember Price. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first of two applications to come before you this evening from our own Berkley Area Chamber of Commerce. The application is being represented by Roseanne Nicolai, who's with you this evening. This marks the return of the Art Bash to its rightful place in June. It was moved around in a couple years, but now that we're largely past the pandemic portion of COVID, it's going to make its triumphant return. Once again, it will be on 12 Mile between Coolidge all the way over to Buckingham. As you'll see in the application, it'll be filled with a ton of great events, vendors, as well as several safety protocols that Roseanne has worked with our own public safety department as well as our emergency management department in order to assure that everybody heading to this year's Art Bash will be able to be incredibly safe. You'll note as well, there were reviews from our own Department of Public Works outlining some of the items that they'd like to see. The Chamber of Commerce has always done a phenomenal job of accommodating staff requests, and we don't see any reason why this year would be any different, which is why you see a recommendation for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Roseanne. I imagine you didn't just come here today to watch us.
Good evening. If you guys don't know, this is actually going to be the 20th Berkley Art Bash. So this is quite a staple in Berkley. A lot of our businesses, the retail and restaurants will tell you it is like their #1 biggest sale a day of the year, volume-wise, because of the amount of people we draw not only within the community but outside throughout Metro Detroit. This has become a pretty significant art fair for, in my opinion, in the Metro Detroit area. And we really appreciate all the support the city, in particular Public Works and Public Safety, gives us to help us to have this day. We have usually over 100 vendors. Applications are still being accepted for artists. Grateful for April McClure, who is the owner of Yellow Door Art Market and Catching Fireflies, who helps curate the event to make sure we have a great amount of artists and a variety of artists. And we usually also have, there'll be children's activities too. So just a great fun day for the 20th time. Thank you.
Questions
Yeah.
for Roseanne? Wow, there you go. Oh, here we go. Councilmember Price.
Just appreciation. Very excited to see this back before us and excited that you're able to resume the traditional time of year. I did want to thank city staff, city attorney, for adding that little note that we are reserving the right to rescind the permit due to state and/or county health and pandemic protocols. So hope that we don't have to. The fact that this is an outdoor event, that it's spread out so far. But I do think it's important that because of the time we live in, that we always make that note just in case things change. But very excited to enjoy it with my family, and thank you to you and all the volunteers that make it happen.
Thank you.
Councilmember Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I echo the appreciation and gratitude to you and the team for bringing the 20th anniversary event to our great downtown, and thank you for that. If folks were interested in seeing more about the event or kind of where the vendors are going to be, or if you're a vendor, potential vendor, and want to apply, is there a website or an email address that you'd recommend?
Yeah, berkleyartbash.com.
berkleyartbash.com. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Well, it is great, Roseanne. Thank you, for being with us and for getting this back in its rightful place in June, and certainly hopeful that everything continues to happen. I have to imagine all of the events, like as we saw last year, are going to be incredibly well attended, and making sure that folks can continue to attend those safely and outdoor events is something that I certainly look forward to this summer. So thank you for continuing all of your work, everything that you've done over the past couple of years to keep things rolling, and coming back here in June with the Art Bash. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M 3022?
Hennon.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Valani.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 3 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M3122, matter of approving the Berkeley Street Art Fest event on Saturday, July 16th, 2022, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Coolidge Highway between Catalpa and Beverly for the Berkeley Area Chamber of Commerce, P.O. Box 72-1253. Approval is contingent upon the submission of required items and documents prior to event dates. Council reserves the right to rescind the permit due to state and/or county health and pandemic protocols.
Is there a motion to approve M 3122?
So moved, Your Honor.
Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Baker with support from Mayor Pro Tem Dean. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of the same items that were brought to your attention the last agenda item apply to this one. This time, Coolidge is getting the love instead of 12 Mile for the second half of the wonderful summer that is the Chamber's events. So this is the Art Bash, the Street Art Festival, which is newer, but still has become quite the success thanks to the Chamber's leadership on this and their volunteer partners. You'll see the scope is outlined in the packets of the event, as well as much the same reviews, and the same process was followed with working with DPW, emergency management, as well as public safety, again, for this event. So, as was said in the previous item, Chamber's a pleasure to deal with. Roseanne always makes sure that everything is in order, and she's an absolute dream to interface with our department. So, again, you see a recommendation from staff on approval of this item.
Thank you. Roseanne, anything new? Or anything you want to add, I should say? You might as well just keep your bag, yeah. a little closer to you.
The one thing is to, and it's more for the public to realize, that this event is different than Art Bash. Art Bash is primarily an art fair. This is all about creating art and engaging the community to create art. We have the chalk art contest. We have a kids area for creating art, where a lot of our vendors or sponsors usually at their booth have something artistic for people to do. So it's a little different. We do have a vendor section. It's called Shop for Good Village, which the vendors are usually makers, or they are selling product that part of their goes to proceeds to help a nonprofit. So it's a slightly different. It's not a traditional art fair like Art Bash is. So in that, we're always accepting vendors, and then you can sign up for the chalk art contest for prizes, and that's at berkeleystreetartfest.com. That one. So so just to clarify, it is different in the sense than Art Bash, where Art Bash is art vendors. So.
Will the chief be reprising his judge role in full regalia?
We hope so. We haven't officially asked yet, but we hope so.
Just letting him know. I mean, it had to be warm, but he did a phenomenal job, and I think that was the first time people were excited to see the judge come around because it was an actual, judge. Thank you again, Roseanne, for bringing this. Obviously, we were able to have this. We've got 20th Art Bash coming up. What
This is the 5th. This will
Street
be
Art
the
Fest.
5th one. Yep.
Yep. And we have, Love on Coolidge, as we talked about as well, not just 12 Mile. Additional questions for Roseanne?
Will Davidson be coming back?
We're not sure yet.
Okay.
So he's checking his schedule. So he might have something else going on, but we're trying to.
We're really getting ahead of the game here, asking you questions when you
Right.
have an opportunity to talk to people.
Well, I can just put in a plug. Davidson is my kid's favorite artist by far, and he has a few
Phenomenal.
permanent installations in Berkeley. We are so lucky. He has so few.
Phenomenal.
But at the library and in front of
Vitrine and Balanced Health, which he does very few. We're like one of 3 cities in the world that has a permanent Davidson. So
thank you for getting him in years past. It's been a treat.
Hopefully, the schedule will work out. We'll be able to have him again. Seeing no additional questions, thank you again, Roseanne, for being with us this evening. And hopefully we'll be able to move forward here with the 5th Street Art Fest.
Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M3122?
Price,
Yes.
Valani,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 4 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M3222, matter of approving the purchase and installation of a water system fixed network gateway at a total cost of $59,381.48 from Ferguson Waterworks of Warren, Michigan.
Is there a motion to approve M3222?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Gavin with support from Councilmember Hennon. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll do the introduction on this, but we are joined by our Department of Public Works foreman, Mr. Sean Young is here, as well as a representative from the vendor. This is an item that's been in our planning stages for quite a while. It's in a, as people probably note, as of right now, we largely collect our data for our water and sewer reads, sort of by door to door. For our residential, but for our commercial portions, we've got radio frequency readers. Instead of driving around, we would want to try to make the process of collecting that data as efficient as possible by allowing a fixed base meter reading system. And so, and with that, you've left the technical knowledge that I've been able to gain on this item. And so I certainly would invite the experts here to fill in some of those blanks for you.
Sean, turn it over to you.
Good, how you doing? This is something I'm actually pretty excited about, because it wasn't that long ago we were actually visiting each house and writing numbers down in a book, and that's how we read meters. This takes that step right out of it. You're not visiting the home anymore, you're not driving down the street. It gives you a read more than once every 3 months. If you have someone that's got a water leak, it'll let you know that, hey, someone's house, it's leaking water, they're gonna have a really big bill. And it gives you that information almost immediately. You know, as far as the logistics or the science to it, Steve would be have the answers for you. But we're looking at 2 locations. One antenna would be at DPW, and the other one would be at Lazenby Field on an existing pole. You know, there's several other communities locally that are using the same system. It's new to us, but it's not necessarily a new technology.
Steve, you want to give us a little more, not too technical?
Oh, bring it on.
I mean, I was more here for questions, but I guess I can explain a little bit more about it. The 2 antennas, gateways that we're going to put up, like you said, will automatically gather the reads, providing more data, basically. So now you're getting reads every 14 seconds, or every 4 hours they're coming in and then backfilling the hourly data. So if there is a move in, move out situation where you normally have to get a truck and roll it out there and get the final read before that could take place, now that can be done from the office. If there's a bill dispute, you can go onto that customer's account and look at their, you know, daily, hourly usage and see exactly what's going on and address it from the office, rather than having to roll a truck out there and find out what's going on. So it just allows the city to not only be more proactive with the residents as far as notifying them, like he said, if there may be a potential problem where there's a leak before it gets to the 90-day mark and the bill's extraordinarily high, but it also allows you to, you know, lessen the amount of times that you actually have to physically send a truck out to address issues.
Well, thank you, one, for being with us, Steve, and for providing that explanation. And as you said, you were primarily here for questions. So are there any questions? Councilmember Baker.
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you both for bringing this before us. This is exciting to have this opportunity to both streamline operations from a municipal perspective, and then also, as you mentioned, provide additional benefits to our residents and businesses who will have greater access to data and confidence in what's going on there. Is there any impact on the residents themselves? Will we need to see house-by-house meter replacements, or is that infrastructure already in place? Or can you basically say, what does this mean to your average, property owner in terms of the sending side of the equation, right? Obviously, the towers are on the receiving end. You know, what needs to happen on the sending side to make sure everything works smoothly?
On the sending side, it's going to require a meter replacement in the home.
Mm-hmm.
We're behind on those. We're a lot further behind than we want to be. But the last couple of years, people weren't really willing to let us in the homes to change meters out. It's COVID and everything.
Of course.
We've got about 300 of the new meters in. So we'll have that data coming in, and we'll be looking at, are we gonna do a mass change out or continue with DPW change of meters when we can?
Nice, thank you. And so is there a schedule or a sequence? Like, are you hitting it, different parts of the city in an order so that folks can kind of anticipate and prepare for this?
Not yet. Right now, what we're hitting is our problem meters.
Mm-hmm.
We've always have, our meters now most of them are old, so you've got 400 to 500 a year, just problem meters that need to be changed. So that's mainly what we're focusing on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully we can accelerate that. We're gonna need to accelerate it to take full advantage of the system.
Sure. If any folks in the community were early interested in being early adopters, is there a way they could raise their hand and get to the front of the list to kind of help get better data?
Give Public Works a call and we can fit you in.
Excellent.
We're also using this opportunity to inventory our lead and copper,
Mm-hmm.
with the lead and water services
Yep.
and copper. We're using that at the same time, taking photos and using that information as well to get lead services changed out, so it's good.
Excellent. So it sounds like a good checkup for the water system there. Yep. Well, I'll be calling to get on that list for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. And I am not a technical person, but my question is, when this data is coming in, does it go into ArcGIS? Does it go into BSNA like an existing something? Or is it a whole separate thing that the data goes in and then how do you extract it? I guess, how does it become usable, I guess?
So it replaces the software that you're currently using. This is a web-based software, so there'll be multiple people that will have access to the information, and it shows up on a dashboard. So you'll have
Okay.
different tiles for leaks or no flow or backflow, so that'll be right in front of your face when you want to go look at it. It does interact with BSNA for billing purposes only.
Lovely.
So you will bring in the file from BSNA to update all the accounts with the current information. The readings will take place, and then you will export it back into BSNA for billing.
Awesome.
Sounds
All
incredible.
of the leak alerts and things like that are on the Neptune dashboard.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Vellani?
So it sounds like the proactive pieces of the program are really great. When you think about the manpower that's gone into the manual readings over the years, if you look at that 4 times a year kind of model, how much time do you anticipate saving as a result of implementing this system?
Well, we generally read a section every month we're reading.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 2 men, probably about a week.
Okay.
To read each section, and that gets everybody read quarterly.
So this will be a significant time savings to free you guys up for all of your other keeping us safe and running.
When it's all complete, it'll be great.
Awesome.
Any additional questions? All right. Well, thank you both for being with us this evening as we look forward to continuing to streamline our efficiency and upgrade our technological infrastructure in our community. So I thank you both for that. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M3222?
Valani,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Turbank.
Yes. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 5 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M3322, matter of approving the purchase of a 2,350 gal anti-ice tank assembly and skid at a total cost of $32,735 from Truck and Trailer Specialties, Inc., utilizing the Mitten Cooperative bid contract.
Is there a motion to approve M3322?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Vellani with support from Councilmember Hennon. Mr. Baumgarten, would you please tell us about our anti-ice tank assembly?
Yes, sir. I will admit, when I heard that we were getting an anti-ice tank, I thought we were getting really serious about winter in Berkeley. But what this actually is continues our strategy of, instead of buying single-use vehicles, this actually works with our swap loader dump truck system. And as part of actually a planned upgrade in our vehicle fleet that started, as you'll note in the memo from Mr. Schuler, started with the purchase of a dump truck with that Tandemax or that that swap loading capacity. So this is the part itself that will be fitted to the vehicle. It will be allowed to be fully utilized in the winter, and then we store it as a standalone piece during the summer months, and can still utilize the vehicle itself for other purchases. So we're very excited about it. And again, this has been, this strategy has been the brainchild of both Sean Young as well as Derek Schuler. And it's yielding incredible fruit. And we're lucky to have these gentlemen at the helm of our Department of Public Works. So with all that buttering up, Sean is still here to answer questions council may have.
Well, Mr. Young, you know that you're probably going to avoid some of the usual questions on the specs that you used to receive from Councilmember Blanchard. Why don't you give us a quick rundown? I mean, I know we are familiar with adding these bodies and what will be coming out of our anti-ice tank.
This is what we're spraying is basically a well brine we get from Oakland County. Oakland County's been very generous and cooperating with us. So it's a brine that we pick up from them. And any chance we can get to reduce our salt usage, especially anytime you over-applicate salt, it goes somewhere. And where it's going is in our lakes. It's going to our streams and our lakes and our rivers. So we try and really limit. We've been working pretty hard the last couple of years to limit the amount we're putting down. It's something we held off on for a couple of years. We really haven't had decent winters enough to test it. We had some smaller tanks.
Yeah.
So last year we were able to test it out with our smaller tanks, and it worked really well. So it's time for us to move to a larger unit.
So just no going back to the beet juice days, huh?
Well, no, you can still put beet juice in with the brine. It makes it last a little longer.
Do we do that now?
Well, we haven't done that yet, but I think that's going to be our future.
Get back into the beet juice. It
Yep.
seemed to work real well for us years ago. Any questions for Mr. Young? Yes, Councilmember Baker.
Thank you again, Your Honor, and thank you as always for not only helping to find new ways to protect the environment, but also streamline the operations with this new contraption here that'll go onto the existing equipment. When do we expect delivery? You know, I'm sure hoping we're not going to need this thing for many, many months, but just curious. And then also from a training perspective, is there any additional training or certifications that our folks would need?
Training-wise, we've got our smaller units that are on the F550 chassis, and it's the same. We kept the same controller across the board, so
Okay.
these guys should be pretty well trained on that.
Yep.
Timeline, they're telling us we'll have it before next winter, and that's what we're going to hold them to. But you know, with things going on now the way they are,
Of course.
there's no guarantee on anything.
Excellent.
When is next winter going to happen?
Yeah, a couple.
2023. I mean, it's Michigan.
Yeah, second winter.
2037, something like
It's like
that,
fifth
probably.
winter.
Yeah.
Second
Thank you,
spring.
sir.
Other questions for our foreman, Mr. Young here? Sean, how many of these bodies do we have now in our fleet? Roughly?
Of this style, or just the bodies?
No, just in general.
Probably 15, 16
Wow.
Which is,
different chassis and.
yeah, between the different chassis, but the ability to swap out and not have to have vehicles that are only single-use limited, I think has been, again, very efficient for the DPW crew, but also super efficient for ease of use in our community, continuing to maintain the very high level that you and the crew have put yourselves in, and people get to hold you to that. But having these, being able to continue to add to our fleet in a manner that is versatile and much more cost-effective than having to get single-use vehicles is something that I am very supportive of and very proud to continue enhancing your fleet with also being respectful to our budget and ability to operate. So I thank you certainly, Sean, for that. And you can pass that on to Derek, who didn't want to come and visit us today, but that's okay.
We're
any
happy
other-
to have you, Sean.
Any other questions for our foreman? All right, well, thank you, Sean. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M3322?
Baker,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Valani,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 6 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M3422, matter of authorizing the mayor to execute a third-party specialized services operating assistance contract between SMART and the city of Berkeley for public transportation services primarily designed for senior citizens and persons with disabilities. The contract period for this program is from October 1st, 2021 to September 30th, 2022.
Is there a motion to approve M3422?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Dean with support from Councilmember Price. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an annual item that comes before council each year. They are later than their usual lateness. Usually they're only about 3 months into the contract year. This year it is half over, but SMART has consistently allowed us to submit items dating all the way back to the beginning of the contract year without issue. You've got Dan McMinn, who is our, let me get it right, Dan, our manager of senior programs and special events. This, as the motion states and the memo backs up, this is largely a benefit to our seniors. So it's one of the items that's overseen by Mr. McMinn.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. As the city manager said, this is a contract that you see every year, and we are receiving the same amount of funding this year as we have in past years. A little bit of information about the transportation program for those who may not know is we run from 8 Mile to 16 Mile, Losser to John R. We run Monday through Friday between the hours of 8:30 and 4 o'clock. We ask that appointments are made at least 2 days in advance. You can be many months in advance if you'd like. Appointments can be made by calling the Parks and Rec Department Monday through Friday between 9 a.m. and 11:30. And the cost of transportation is a suggested donation of $3 for a one-way trip and $5 for a round trip. This is used for people who need to go to the grocery store, doctor's appointments, beauty salons. You name it, if it's in the boundaries, we will try and do it as long as it fits in our schedule. This is one of my favorite programs that we have at Parks and Rec, and this program cannot be what it is without our drivers. So I'm going to take this moment to say thank you to our drivers, James Dunlap, who's been with us for multiple years. We just had a driver recently retire, Tim Renaud. He was great, but we have replaced him with a Berkley resident named Brian Boland, who has taken the streets by storm. People love him, and we're so happy to have him with us. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Questions for Mr. McMinn? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Dan, if you could just state the phone number for Parks and Recreation if somebody wanted to call and make a reservation, please.
Absolutely. Our phone number at Parks and Recreation is 248-658-3470. Again, 248-658-3470.
Any other questions? As Mr. McMinn mentioned, this is an incredibly important program, and Dan does a tremendous job administering it. And as the city manager said, the contract does say October of 2021. As typical with SMART, we're usually a little bit behind, but that does not, as he said, stop our service, and we will continue. Even though this runs through September 30th of 2022, I anticipate sometime in 2023, we will be able to continue moving forward with this very important contract. Thank you, Mr. McMinn. Lastly, May 11th, that is on your calendar. It's a softball game, I believe.
Are you asking about a Wednesday?
That might be.
Because that Wednesday is not available at the fields, we are looking at a different date to be determined.
Wait, what?
Is he kidding?
Wait,
are you for real?
We just keep the trophy?
No, we're looking at a new date, but
No,
the
we're not
fields
changing,
are
no.
reserved for high school athletics that day. So
I think we should support the high school athletics, and I don't think we should try to take away from them with all the fans coming to watch us.
I mean, if that's how you feel, you can let them know that.
I will speak to the dance club. All right, thank you. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M3422?
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Valani,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 7 on tonight's agenda?
Resolution number R322, matter of approving a resolution of the Council of the City of Berkley, Michigan, establishing an ad hoc Woodward Dream Cruise Committee, coordinating the 2022 Cruise Fest events for the City of Berkley.
Is there a motion to approve R0322?
So moved, Your Honor.
Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Baker with support from Councilmember Gavin. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Summer in Berkeley is starting to take shape with Berkeley Days in May, Art Bash in June, Street Art Fest in July. Now our focus turns towards Cruise Fest and Dream Cruise in August of this year. So with that comes the annual creation of the ad hoc committee in order to make it a complete success. You see the resolution in front of you that outlines all the different people and groups that come together to make sure it's the best event it possibly could be. And a strong part of that leadership is our own Mr. Dan McMinn, who is our lead on this. This is one of the special events that his title designates him to be our staff liaison for, and so he's before you this evening to answer questions on it.
Good evening again. This will be our 26th Cruise Fest event and is scheduled for Friday, August 19th, followed by the Dream Cruise on Saturday the 20th. We are looking forward to a very successful event, but I'm not going to take the stand on this one. I'm going to let our chair, Mark Kuhn, come up and say a few things on the behalf of the committee.
Welcome back, Mark.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. Glad to be back. It was strange, I think, because last year, after not having it for a year, everybody kind of, or at least I did, but I think everyone else did too, kind of felt a little like out of place or out of step or something like that. And flubbing through it type of a thing, even though it was a good event and it went off really well without a hitch. We did well with the merchandise and all that type of stuff. I feel like, okay, now we're ready. We kind of like warmed up last year, so now we're ready. And I know personally I'm excited to do this again and get back at it. And hopefully we can come up with maybe a couple of new things that we want to do. That's what I'm hoping to be able to do with the committee and stuff. I don't know what those are yet, but I'll ask Sean because he always has good ideas. Usually we have to throw them out, but
he's already run out of here, so that's a good thing.
I know.
Let's.
I know he has.
Yeah, let's get him
so
now.
you can tell him later that I talked bad about him. Anyways,
he's going home to watch. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm ready to do this. I think that we actually started really early with getting the committee together, that type of thing, and we're going to have a meeting here very shortly. So from that, then we'll see. And I'm sure we'll be coming to you again with a question or two.
Well, we look forward to that as the Cruise Fest is certainly something that is certainly a signature event in our community, and coming back for the 26th year after a slight break, and then 25th year, and now that everything's running again, well-oiled machine, got the energy back.
It's a lot of fun, and I expect it to be that again. Even though last year it was fun, but
I was a little concerned, Mark. I heard rumblings that maybe you were 25 and out, and
I considered it, to be quite honest. Then my wife told me I can't.
Tell Cinda thanks, and I was certainly hoping that was not going to be the case.
No,
so
it
thank
wasn't.
you.
Yep.
Thank you for bringing this back to us again, Dan and everybody else, Parks and Rec, all of the departments that are involved in this.
I
We know
appreciate
it's a
being able
tremendous
to do
undertaking.
it, quite frankly.
Well, we certainly do as well. Questions for Mr. Kuhn or Mr. McMinn? No, I guess we're ready. We'll see.
Set
Oh,
enough.
we do have a question.
This is a helpful tidbit that I thought the city council
Excuse
and
me,
the
what's
committee would like to hear.
what's your name?
Miguel McGinnis of downtown Berkeley, but Oakland County supplies different data that based on cell phone usage, like what kind of visitors we get every day of the year in downtown Berkeley. But the Cruise Fest is literally by far the biggest turnout event in downtown Berkeley, ergo probably also Berkeley. But I just want to share that because the work that you do and the department does, it leads to a lot of eyeballs on our community. So, and it also tells us where they come from. So obviously a great deal of it are Berkeley residents, but it does draw, it's a big destination and a big magnet for downtown Berkeley. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel, for adding that to the conversation. It is a tremendous event. It's a catalytic event for what we do in the community, and I know everybody looks forward to that. Seeing no additional questions or comments, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on R0322?
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennon?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Volani?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Turbrack?
Yes. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 8 on tonight's agenda?
Ordinance number 0222, matter of considering the second reading and adoption of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Berkley, Michigan to amend section 30-807 of Article 15 of Chapter 30 marijuana businesses to increase the license limit and to modify penalties.
Is there a motion to approve 00222?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Price with support from Mayor Pro Tem Dean. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item returns to City Council after the first reading at the previous meeting. There are no changes based on the feedback from City Council that we received so far, and therefore it's presented to you in the same form that it took at the previous meeting where Council was able to vote on it.
Mr. Attorney? Mr. Chris, there, again, as City Manager mentioned, there have been no changes. I know that
That's correct, Your Honor.
you and Mr. Starin have swapped seats for this, but no.
Yes, I'm lucky to be here with you this evening, Mayor. A tough time getting that one out. The form of the proposed ordinance is as was presented at the first reading, Your Honor. There are no changes.
So there are no changes from the first reading, and we certainly have second readings of every ordinance, and that's what we are here to do this evening. Before I hand it off or ask if there are any questions or comments from council, I'll open it up to any folks that are here with us this evening if they would like to comment on the ordinance before. Certainly.
Thank you very much. My name is Bill Scarmaeus, 1878 Rosemont, just down the street a ways. My wife Jackie joining me tonight. We kind of back up to a proposed facility, but I suppose I should have came in and talked off agenda because it's really a different agenda item. But I would like to first off just say a few statements about my opposition to increasing the licensing. I think that we should stick exactly and stay within the improved licensing and the parameters that were originally prevailed. I really see no other reason. And I think I watched some of the videos, some of the previous meetings, and I saw that there was a concern about possibly 5 licensing, and that would give us a really dubious distinction of having more licenses, perhaps, than any other community with similar size and demographics. I really don't think that's good optics for our community. After all the great things that people are doing here in the community, gosh, let's keep it on track here, okay, where you guys were. And secondly, I just wanted to read a little bit of a letter that I submitted, and I think I submitted it to everybody on council. And it's a deep concern that I have about the zoning of the loom that could be potentially within 500 feet of my home and 500 feet of an established early learning center called Kidner Care. And by the way, I have no personal, I guess, affections to it. I have no children at Kinder Care. I really don't know them that well, to be honest with you. But what I do know is there's children there, and that's what concerns me the most. But let me read it briefly, and I won't go into this into a long detail. But as I state in the letter, and I like this into the minutes, you know, that I object, my wife and I both object, to the proposed loom dispensary on 12 Mile Road. And we encourage the city council and planning commissions, which I'll be there tomorrow night, not to approve this loom dispensary. We're concerned as Rosemont, and I talked to some of my neighbors about it, property values, safety. There's a whole host of issues of changing that and putting that in our back area. Secondly, as I mentioned, it's within 1,000 feet. We counted, and it looks like it's under 1,000 feet to an established early learning center. And that early learning center has pre-K. But you know, when you look at the, I guess the law, the ordinance, I downloaded that ordinance from a website. And I guess it struck me because I didn't see in the ordinance any comment. And I spoke with other members here at council and received feedback that the law is silent. And being silent on the issue of pre-K concerns me, because pre-K to me is just as important as K through 12. I mean, having raised children, having 3 grandchildren of my own right now, gosh, I mean, a 5-year-old to a 6-year-old, that's a fine line of differentiation between those 2 kids. And to the state being silent on it, that's for another legislative move, which I'm going to contact my state legislative authorities on it. I think that's important. But I do believe that if the state law is silent on that, there's got to be a concern. I can't be the only one. And one of the articles that I sent to you all was the 2019 article from the University of Michigan. That was the C.S. Mott Children's Center, that they do polling. And polling is conducted throughout the United States. And if you did a deep dive into this and took a look around, you'd see that their polling is recognized on CNN, Fox, Business Report, Bloomberg. It made USA Today. This particular study that they quoted. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I sent it to you all. But I think the bottom line that they talk about is that the majority of the parents want to say so of where these centers, dispensaries are located at. And I think that's a really important consideration. And when you take a deeper dive into the data that was reflected, their main concerns are the safety and the potential intoxication of people who are on marijuana around our children. Well, that's an important consideration because the study went on to say that they want buffers around schools, and we have buffers around schools now because of these concerns. We obviously have these buffers and red zones that we have in the city because parents are concerned, residents are concerned. I'm concerned. I can't see any more important charter than this city keeping the well-being of our children at mind. We can't neglect that fact. So, you know, I share those very same concerns that were reflected in this study, that people are concerned about crime, about violence, cash businesses. And I know there's debit card availability now in the state of Michigan for dispensaries, and I'm sure the people from Loom will tell you that don't worry, we're not, we're going to be mostly cashless. Well, I've never been into a Loom dispensary, so I couldn't say that. But I do believe having a Scheduled I controlled narcotic that the federal government still considers illegal in the United States that can't be used in our banking system, less than 500 feet from my home. That's a non-starter, folks. I'm sorry. I just have to tell you that. It concerns me as a 33-year resident of this community. And when you only examine the dispensaries on the prism of state law, and of course that would be for your city attorney to determine that, and I'm sure your ordinances are well established and written, but gosh, you got to take a look at outside that box a little bit. Think outside a little bit. K through 12, I get it, everybody gets it. But think about those kids just slightly under that. We're within a 500 to 600 feet distance from people who will be buying marijuana with THC grades now that are evaluated by the states. There has been recalls on these marijuana substances, and unfortunately, no one really knows. As one of the articles in Mott Children's Hospital pointed out, the THC content of these is so variable, no one really knows. As a matter of fact, C.S. Mott, as well as University of Michigan, did another study, which I have, it's embedded in this, but I'll share it with you, that it was said that 51% of the people, 56% of another poll that was done of people who did medical marijuana admitted to driving high. And a full 51% they were very high. And they didn't wait the 8 hours that you should be driving a car for medical marijuana. So I'm going to go full circle back and think about a dispensary and people buying this, people running out of their whatever they're buying, their edibles, their gummies, their smokables, and returning back and getting them and driving through a parking lot that's potentially shared because it is a wide open parking lot from one building to the other, and that parking lot will allow cars to traverse. So it puts those children at risk. It also puts my property at risk. Well, that's my big concern here tonight. I love this town. Everything I heard tonight, wow. We're having all this stuff going on, the Berkley Bash and all of this. I haven't been to a city council meeting in 30 years. And the last time I was here because of a Farbman property. I just want you all to know that. It was when they changed the buildings behind us and Farbman was involved in construction back there. And I had a number of objections to Mr. Farbman and his group there. And here we are again, 30 years later, and I'm talking to you again about another Farbman investment. I don't want to say it in that matter, but I will say that over the few years that I've known, about 30 years, they have not been a good neighbor. And I'll leave it at that, based on some things that I've seen in their parking lots. So, in closing, I really just want you all to think about it. Think about the C.S. Mott children's study that I sent to you. Think about all the ramifications of a dispensary being close to children. Think about the dispensary ramifications, particularly the Loom dispensary on 12 Mile Road. Think about our residents. There's multiple residents. They're not here tonight, but I'm here. And I'm telling you, we're all concerned. You got to do good for us, folks. We depend on you. And we depend on you doing the right thing, and I encourage you to vote no when that opportunity comes up, and I'm going to reflect the same to the Planning Commission, to vote no on the licensing provision for the Loom dispensary located on 12 Mile Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Hopefully the next time you come back, it's not 30 years and it's not regarding the same issue, and I don't mean that in any jest. Thank you.
James Campbell, 1591 Catalpa. I pretty much made my position clear at the last meeting, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'm also not going to fight back against what seems to be a foregone conclusion here. If it wasn't for my guilty pleasure in the Woodward Talks police beat, I may not have noticed this article that caught my attention. That was where the attorneys were telling the city council, the attorneys for the applicants were telling city council how to craft this ordinance. It piqued my curiosity enough to listen to the council playback online, and it ticked me off when the attorney for Attitude Wellness threatened the city with a lawsuit. It really ticked me off, and it really insulted me too. But I understand from the vote from the first reading where this is going to go, and I'd like to just let you know that Attitude Wellness has now laid bare their strategy of how they're going to deal with the city of Berkeley. And at this point, I want to caution you, Mr. Baumgarten, Mr. Chris, Mr. Mayor. When we're dealing with this organization, it needs to be by the book. And you need to caution this planning commission as they're going through the sketch plan review and the approval. Needs to be by the book, because you step out of line, we got another threat of a lawsuit. We've more lawsuits coming down the pipeline. This comment's for the citizens of Berkeley. These guys have gotten their way. They've gotten their way with threats. Everybody's worn out by marijuana. Every government at every level is worn out. State Senate, municipal governments, county governments, state governments, federal governments. As a CPA licensed by the state of Michigan, I can tell you the U.S. tax court does not want to hear another marijuana case come before it. I'd be very curious to hear some commentary on some stories from the Michigan Municipal League about how this has just worn everybody down, the citizenry, the government, everybody who's involved in it. But they got their way. Where's their magnanimity in this whole thing? I haven't seen anybody in here to offer more commentary since the threat of a lawsuit. So that's really all that I wanted to say. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Seeing no additional comments from those in attendance, any comments, further comments from council? And I guess just to clarify, we are not granting any licenses or approving any licenses or any of that this evening. That, as was just mentioned, will follow the process outlined through the Planning Commission. What we are looking at today is the ordinance and increasing the cap from 3 to 5, as has been discussed and outlined by the city manager and the city attorney. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah, just a few things. If the goal for going from 3 to 5 is to avoid litigation, I just really am not sure how it's going to help. We just heard pretty convincing argument if these folks don't get their way at any step in the process, whether it's getting the license or whether it's in planning commission review. They will probably go after us, guns and blazing. We're already at 5 lawsuits, and for people keeping track at home, that's up 1 from the last time we were here. There's been a new one since we had that. And then if any of these 5 lawsuits prevail, we could very well end up with a tie again and requiring a tiebreaker and just making this entire exercise fruitless and counterproductive. But I really want to emphasize again that this is brand new to all of us. And for example, it is crystal clear already the parking requirements we have are wrong. And several of these sites, that's going to push parking into the neighborhoods. And we don't know yet what other things we've gotten wrong. But once we grant these licenses, the parking problems could last literally forever. So I'd rather we figure it out at 3 sites rather than unnecessarily expanding the problem to 5 sites. Otherwise, we are headed down the path of another Vincetta garage situation where we cause an undue burden in our residential neighborhoods. What I see is increasing the number of licenses is bad policy. That's going to have negative impact on our residents. It's probably not going to solve the problems we're trying to avoid, and it's just rolling over to legal bullying. However, I would love to hear from everybody that supports increasing 5 licenses, what the reasoning and rationale for that is.
Thank you. Additional comments, questions from council members? All right, seeing none, again, this is the same ordinance that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and we had a vote on. Ms. Mitchell, will you now please call the roll on O0222?
Hennan,
No.
Price,
Yes.
Villani,
Yes.
Baker,
No.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
No.
Turbrack.
Yes. O0222 has passed, and we now move on, Ms. Mitchell, please, to item number 9.
Motion number M3522, matter of authorizing the amendment of the 2021-22 budget as presented.
Is there a motion to approve M3522?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Dean with support from Councilmember Villani. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff brings before the council on a quarterly basis budget amendments to adjust as we go along to account for either unforeseen surpluses or excesses in revenues or expenditures. Again, our finance director has prepared this document and review of the city's various funds for you and placed it in the packet. We are joined this evening by Mr. Pollack, who is here live and in person to kind of go through. His memo did point out some items of note for you, but if there are additional questions, Mr. Pollack is here for you this evening.
Mr. Pollack?
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
It has been a while. I tried to Zoom, but I was told that it doesn't work too well, so. But I'm happy to be here. I am very happy to be here. It's good to see everybody. If you had any specific questions, there weren't a ton of budget amendments halfway through the year. Some of the larger ones were generally what we do and what we already did in September. We had some capital that we knew was not going to meet the June 30 deadline, so we pushed that back. We do have some increases in healthcare costs, which we had last year as well. Although I just got the invoice for last month, and that was better. So we pay month to month, so we're not really sure. But I think a lot of people post-COVID held off, and now they're not holding off. So we had some increases there. But one of the other requests I did put in the memo was Councilmember Hennan asked if we could look at, I think Councilmember Baker as well, asked if we could look at like fund balance policies outside the general fund. Although they're not practical in other funds, I think it's a good idea to look at existing reserves, which we do have They're all very healthy, I think other than our sanitation rubbish fund and Parks and Rec, which we know and we've done with it being a revolving fund, we tend to have very low, and at this point, almost no fund balance, but the park projects have been supplemented by the general fund. But you can see we have pretty healthy fund balances in reserves in all of our different funds, with the exception of those two. But if you have any specific questions on anything, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Questions for Mr. Pollack on the amendments today? Councilmember Price?
Yes, this isn't exactly about the amendment specifically, but I did read in your memo that you noted that once again, we're running above budget for healthcare, and that is overall a continuing trend. At the MML conference and in some conversations with city managers from Oak Park and Madison Heights, I learned about that wellness center option to supplement our employees' health care. They have seen savings because they're self-funded like we are. And I just would like to ask the city to begin the process of looking into the wellness center as a benefit for employees. I know it's been popular there for the employees and it saved the city money, so I'd like us to research that for our city as well.
Absolutely, we'll take a look at it.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Price. Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah, and this is more for a discussion amongst us regarding fund balances than anything's fine with the amendments. I'm glad seeing the fund balances and seeing where we are with some of them. I would like if eventually we make sort of a formal policy, and it looks like if we shoot for in most of our, the general fund policy that we already have, I'm happy with. If in the other funds, if we shoot for 25% reserves, that seems to make sense. Looking at the solid waste, we are absolutely going to need a Headley rollback or some other mechanism to start increasing that. And part of that balance might be once we hit a certain threshold, like we're below 25%, we start investigating, is it time for a rollback again? And on Parks and Rec, that 0.1% balance, I think, is deceptive because so much of it is capital projects that we transfer in from the general fund. And something I talked to the city manager about that we might consider doing is separating the capital projects back into the general fund so we have a good look at if the Parks and Rec revolving fund is being self-supporting in the events they're doing. And then I think that would give us a better picture of how it's operating, separating the capital from the rest of it. So just as we go in towards budget season, just some thoughts I wanted to put out there and maybe something that we look at making a little more formal.
Well, I think that does make a lot of sense as we move into budget season and having these conversations. We'll have our budget hearings coming up in May. Councilmember Baker?
Thank you, Your Honor, and sorry to kind of leave you standing there again, but just as a quick addition to my colleagues' comments about the fund balances, I love the idea of being a bit more formal with all of them. I'd encourage us to take a look at a case-by-case basis to ensure the threshold is appropriate for that given balance. And 25 is certainly a very appropriate, starting point. For instance, our Downtown Development Authority, DDA, its function is to fuel funding into the downtown. So the objective there would be to have a far lower fund balance because if it's there, then that would signal that we're saving up for something big, right? That certainly would make sense. But just as a rule of thumb, the money coming in is meant to go back out into the community on that particular fund. So just wanted to help remind us all that, as we look at these things, this probably isn't going to be a peanut butter one-size-fits-all. And I know that we're up to the task to ensure that we find the right levels for each of our funds so we can operate efficiently. And thank you for your patience and for your fantastic work. I think these are excellent amendments as well.
Yeah. 25% is a good target. It definitely is. It's what I would recommend in most funds. That threshold tends to make sense before you start, as you mentioned, Councilmember Hennon, the sanitation, the rubbish fund. You run into the rollbacks and you get to that point where I want to say it was around 12.5% fund balance there. So and we've been able to maintain. But yeah, you do get to that point where you start looking at Headley override and things of that nature. So, but if you do it kind of, you know, as an entire project and looking at each fund, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, thank you both, and thank you, Mr. Pollack. As Councilmember Baker mentioned, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and as you mentioned, it's not practical to do that for all of our funds, but having more structured policies for balances, and again, knowing what is actual, you know, cash assets and what are assets that are on the ground that
Right.
don't really count as a fund, as a reserve, as a fund balance, will be important for us, especially on the DPW side, to continue looking at the various funds and how those things work. But again, with the budget season coming up and with our two budget work sessions scheduled here for the second week of May, I believe, just before we're not having a softball game anymore, we will have opportunity to have these conversations, certainly, as well as looking through the rest of the budget. I mean, Mr. Pollack, I know you're right in the throes of budget season right now, so I appreciate you coming with these amendments, keeping us timely and on track. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Pollack? And it is nice to see you again in person. Thank you. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M3522?
Price,
Yes.
Valani,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Where do we go next, Ms. Mitchell?
Councilmember Valani.
That was right. Councilmember
right.
Valani.
My updates are brief because many of them were already covered earlier. So, from the Berkley Area Chamber, the Berkley Art Bash is back in June, on Saturday, June 11th, from 10 to 6 on 12 Mile, as was discussed earlier. They are accepting applications for artists, food vendors, and sponsors. Visit berkleyartbash.com to apply. The Berkley Street Art Fest will take place July 16th from 11 to 5 on Coolidge between Catalpa and Beverly. They are accepting applications for Shop for Good vendors, sponsors, and food vendors. Visit berkleystreetartfest.com for more information. And that is all.
Thank you. Councilmember Gavin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Brief update. Planning Commission, there's been no meeting since our last council meeting. It'll be tomorrow, March 22nd at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. Environmental Advisory Committee, the next meeting will be April 21st at 6:30 on the second floor of the Public Safety Building. And then just a couple quick congratulations in order to former council member Blanchard on a great job presenting at the Michigan Municipal League, on emergency preparedness. And then also congratulations to council members Hennan, Price, and Mayor Pro Tem Dean on completing their differing levels of the Elected Officials Academy. For the MML, it was great to be at the conference and attend such great educational sessions. Nice to be back. And I was able to moderate one of the sessions on sustainability in communities, and so that was quite fun as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Gavin. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. So piggybacking on what Councilmember Gavin said about the MML, we all attended as the council as a whole. And for those of you that don't know, it's an opportunity for elected officials throughout the state to come and gather and exchange ideas and, you know, network and all of those things. And truly the highlight was seeing former Councilmember Blanchard as one of the presenters. And he presented on emergency management training for local governments. And we, of course, all went and supported Jack. But even though Jack's not on council anymore, he continues to serve the city of Berkeley, and he does it so well. He's so professional, and we are truly lucky to have a resident like Jack that continues to give of his time and talent to the city of Berkeley. So thank you, Jack. On to Parks and Recreation. This is a doozy, so settle in, because there's so much good happening. For those of you that don't know, and you may already know, J.C. Park it's undergoing a little overhaul. It's a beautiful park. It has a lot of mature trees. It has a walkway. Excuse me. But Parks and Rec wants to bring this into the 21st century, and I could not agree more. So the plan is to update the pathways, increase the accessibility and use of the park, which I think is really important, and to install a state-of-the-art, universally accessible playscape. And we talked earlier tonight in our proclamations about equity and accessibility, and this park will do just that. So here's where we come in as residents. J.C. Park has been accepted into the Public Spaces Community Places program. It's a placemaking initiative from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, also known as the MEDC. So as part of the program, the City of Berkeley has until Monday, May 9th, to raise $50,000 through crowdfunding. And for those of you in council chambers, you can see on the screen, you can donate at patronicity.com/JC Park. MEDC will match $50,000, up to $50,000 of funding. And it's a critical piece of funding for this park, because the more amenities that we can have for inclusivity, the more kids are going to be able to use the park. So I'm going to thank everyone in advance for digging into your wallets or credit cards or whatever and making a contribution, whether it's $5 or $5,000, whatever your heart and your budget allows. But I think it's important that we as residents get behind this project, because it will truly be a benefit to all. Okay, I'm done about the park. Now, senior hopping into spring bingo is on April 20th at 12 noon. You may sign up at the community center or by calling 248-658-3470. And signups for spring and summer programming continues online. Please check your Berkley Buzz for more information. And I also want to shout out to Teresa and her team and Tori for really elevating the Berkley Buzz. It's way more user-friendly, things are easier to see, and it's just a nicer publication, and it really, I think, puts Berkeley in our best light. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Baker.
Oh, that's me. Hello again, everybody. The Berkeley Historical Committee encourages us all to continue to celebrate that it was 90 years ago this month that we made the transition from a village to a city, which is super cool. And opening on April 1st at our museum will be a special display on the Holland hardware fire of 1978. Those of you that remember that, on 12 Mile. It was the biggest fire in Berkeley history. And everyone who stops in will receive a free gift, and children will receive a junior fire chief's helmet. So that ought to be a lot of fun too, as they run around the place. The new edition of the quarterly museum newsletter is out. It looks exactly like this. And it's online at the museum website, and paper copies like this can be found at the museum, at the library, and our city clerk's desk right here in Berkeley City Hall. And visitors are always welcome to the museum. It's open Wednesdays from 10 till 1 and Sundays from 2 until 4. And you can always visit us online at berkeleyhistory.com. Our DDA board met a few weeks ago as well on March 9th, Wednesday. They talked about things like facade grants, additional mural opportunities, crosswalk enhancements with a particular focus on Coolidge, and many more. And as delightfully mentioned by our DDA director at the onset of this session here this evening, the Downtown Leprechaun Scavenger Hunt continues to run from the 9th until the 31st. And the Leprechaun Story Stroll, again, as delightfully shared a little while ago, it continues to be in full swing from the 17th until the 31st as well. And for more information on that and more upcoming great events and things about our downtown, you can visit downtownberkeley.com. And finally, it was Jennifer Granholm, current Energy Secretary and former Governor of the state of Michigan, who said, America needs to be able to be energy independent. And the electric vehicle and the battery technology is one way of getting there. Now, as was mentioned by several of my colleagues, we were able to attend at the Michigan Municipal League a variety of different topics of interest, not only to ourselves, but also to help benefit our community. And I think we did a great job doing like the divide and conquer and making sure we had all the bases covered. And one of the sessions that I was very fortunate to attend had to do with providing electric vehicle charging infrastructure at the municipal level to have that capability available for those that do choose to make that transition and step into electrification of their vehicular activities. We learned more about the value of beginning to encourage and support EVs more regularly and routinely and completely throughout our area. and the benefits that it provides not only to the city and to our businesses, but also to the residents and to visitors. We as a community, just to share, our council is beginning to look at EV infrastructure opportunities within the city, and there are some ideas about what we might be able to do in the coming months and years to begin to take that step. We certainly won't be the first in the area, but I think we're at the threshold of being the next in the area to begin to provide this infrastructure that folks can feel that just more comfortable about making that step to kick the gas and go electric. So that was great. Thanks to my colleagues for joining me for that, and thank you. I'd just like to again say, please stay safe, everybody, and please hug somebody that you love. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Baker. Councilmember Price.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Turbrack. Last week, like the rest of council and the city manager, I had the privilege of attending the Michigan Municipal League's Capital Conference in Lansing. Some of the highlights and takeaways from my perspective included learning more about municipal emergency management from our very own Jack Blanchard, networking with council members and city commissioners from other communities, and sharing strategies and resources for dealing with our shared challenges, and also learning best practices for lobbying our leaders in Lansing so that we can get the resources we need to support the infrastructure and essential services for our residents. We were able to put those practices to use when we all sat down for breakfast with Regina Weiss, our state representative. She also happens to serve on the Appropriations Committee. And we got to share our priorities for the state's budget with Berkley in mind. As a former city council member from Oak Park, Representative Weiss understands what we need from Lansing, and I'm grateful to have her there advocating on our behalf. And finally, I'd like to express my appreciation for the many volunteers who bring events like Berkley Days, the Berkley Art Bash, Berkley Street Art Fest, and Berkley Cruise Fest to our community. Our city wouldn't be the same without you. And remember, if you are still looking for more volunteers to join your organization, please reach out to the Citizens Engagement Advisory Committee through their Berkley Community Resources Facebook group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Price. Councilmember Hennon.
Yes, the Zoning Board of Appeals met to consider two-dimensional variances to replace an existing home. They approved the smaller on one side, but denied the larger request on the other side. Then they'll be meeting again in April for a sign variance at the House of Renew on Woodward near 12 Mile. I recently attended a workshop from the Michigan Association of Planners on managing risk, making sound planning and zoning decisions. Learned a lot, saw the things we're doing well, the things that we can improve, and as well as some very recent appellate court cases that we need to pay attention to and be monitoring. The Michigan Municipal League Conference, I was there too. Everything else I had to say has already been said, so no need to repeat that. And just wanted to give congratulations to now retired Public Safety Officer Greg Betts. Councilmember Price and I and the city manager were able to attend his retirement after 25 years of service to Berkley. It's clear he was well accomplished and well loved and will be missed in Berkley. Thank you.
Thank you, and that will not be the last time that we see Greg. He'll be coming back so that we can recognize him again as well. So thank you for that.
Excellent.
Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like many of you, I do want to put out a quick note on the MML. It is a statewide gathering of elected officials from everywhere from Monroe to Iron Mountain. But the fact that Berkley had all of its council members there is impressive, and it's rare. So I hope people at home know that the roles that you guys play is not only in this room, but it's advocacy across the state. It's interacting with your neighbors, but all while holding down full-time jobs. So that is not an easy thing to do by any means. And so I was impressed, and I got an opportunity to impress others as I bragged on my city council's level of commitment. So it's fantastic that you're all there. Those that only had one or two members probably missed just as much as they saw. But that was not the case for this council and not the case for this community. So kudos to each of you on that. And other than that, I thought they put together a great event. It was great to be back in person. I know I came back with a notebook full of items that I wanted to work into the day-to-day operations and the team that I lead here. But just incredibly grateful for the MML, not just for putting together events like that, but to follow up the advocacy and really get a chance to hear all that they do. And it's incredibly impressive because of member communities like Berkley. But that was my note on MML, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christ.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item. Council probably is aware, but the U.S. Treasury Department has finalized its rule effective April 1st, 2020, with respect to the coronavirus state and local recovery funds, which will be coming to communities across the state as provided under the American Rescue Plan. So that rule will be finalized effective April 1st. Rule is finalized, but effective April 1st. Nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. I too want to actually just thank my colleagues and city manager. You know, we see a lot of folks at the Michigan Municipal, at the Capitol Conference, a lot of, you know, you get one or two, maybe a couple people from the communities, but Berkley's reputation is significant. Not only the involvement of many of my colleagues, not only in certification levels, but also as moderators. I can guarantee you that now the city of Berkley is the leader in the state in emergency management. And anytime anybody has a question on emergency management, they're gonna come here and they're gonna look for former council member Blanchard. And Jack did that because he wanted to do that, because of how important it is for him, and he wants to make sure that other communities understand all of the intricacies in there, with Jack and Oakland County being there to lead that session. And that session's gonna continue, hopefully as actually a breakout group. This was actually optional. And there were a number of folks there, and including it in a breakout group. But the way that Berkley is known throughout the state for their commitment, their involvement, and their activity in MML is certainly commendable. So I just want to thank my colleagues for, as the city manager mentioned, putting in time that takes away from other responsibilities, other jobs, children in my case, and some others, to be able to spend some time trying to continue to learn, ask questions, interact with other folks who are in similar situations. And I'll tell you what, one thing we learned is we're not alone. Any of the things that we are talking about in our community are happening across the state. And being able to have conversations and get feedback and also guidance from the MML on how some of these things will ultimately affect us. And I just want to thank the MML for what they do on behalf of us and the advocacy that they continue to provide to all of their member cities. Other than that, everything else I had was already mentioned. Thank you for that. And again, as I mentioned before, after Councilmember Hennon, I too want to congratulate Greg, unfortunately, on his retirement from our community, but it will not be the last time that we see him, so everybody has at least one more opportunity to thank him. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Hennon. I didn't think anybody else wanted to leave.
We don't want to leave.
That never happens. Usually I don't even get it out of my mouth. Supported from Mayor Pro Tem Dean. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Baker,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Valani,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. The March 21st, 2022 meeting of the 39th Council of the City of Berkley is adjourned. If you had a proclamation, please send those